Hello, good morning, students. Today I'm going to explain about how to write short story. Of course, that in the previous meeting, I have already given you some exercises how to write poems, for example, poetries, short stories, and also other topics. But today I will explain to you again about this how to write short story in a very good way. Okay, in this lesson, you have to understand what short story is, and how it differs to other media of writing. Okay, all right. One of the best ways for amateur writers, yeah, because we are not very accustomed in writing, especially, but maybe later on you can try to write your story on Wattpad. Yeah, I believe that all of you have already signed in to many websites of writing platform, especially in this case Wattpad. Now, here in writing short story, you have to create a story based upon real life occurrences. So it's not always supposed to be true story, but it is upon the real life occurrences or the activities. For example, you use your daily activities that you usually do. Okay, and here, for example, Mark Twain worked on a riverboat. Jack London explored Alaska. Hemingway was an avid fisherman and loved to travel. And these experiences that they have already experienced allowed them to create settings and also characters that seem real. That's why it's easy to write the short story because they have already experienced it and put it into a story by writing. Nah, trying to become a short story writer and endeavoring to develop this creative writing form involves two important steps. Okay, the first one, you have to be aware of the following four basic elements of the story, such as theme, plot, setting, and also characterization. And the second one, you have to practice the drive. How how to combine these four elements into a lifelong process. That's why I told you that you have to use the experience that you have already had before. Okay, now you have to know some elements of the short story itself. So, of course, you are familiar with theme, plot, setting, and also characterization because you are not only seeing them when you write, but but also when you read a novel, for example, and other story. Now here, there are some elements in short story that you have to know, okay, due to that is very significant in writing. All right, as a form of fictional prose, the short story is basically a narrative that is about imaginary events which happen to imaginary people or characters of the story. In most stories, the events lead to a crisis that usually gets resolved at the end. Okay, so that's why you will find climax there and also the after climax. The resolution may or may not be a happy one. Resolution here is the result after the climax happens. So what happened in the result? Whether it becomes sad ending, sad ending, bad ending, or it's a happy ending. Okay. Noted, story writer Edgar Allan Poe has explained in a very simple terms that a short story has three parts. The first one is the beginning, middle, and also end. And see, in beginning, how it explain how the characters usually meet in the very beginning. Okay, and in the middle, how the characters encounters a crisis that seems to overtake them. Okay, so this is usually the climax. And the last one, the end, how the crisis get resolved in the end. Okay. Now together, by using these three parts, it constitutes the plot of the story. By taking the readers through these three parts with the characters, the writer, as it were, conveys his message. And this message can safely be called the theme of the story. Now, you have to know what message you are going to convey to the reader after you while you are writing the story. Okay. Okay, I'm going to read this activity one. The activity one. Okay, this restaurant. One such ruin is Foxburn, but I won't tell you exactly where it can be found. because I visit the place for purposes of meditation or just plain contemplation, and I would hate to arrive there one morning to find about 50 people picnicking on the grass. And yet it did witness a picnic of sorts the other day when the children accompanied me to the ruin. They had heard it was haunted and they wanted to see the ghost. Okay. So based on this extract, you have to understand who are the characters, or yeah, which one is the characterization, which one is the theme, setting, and also the plot. Now, at times it happens that some stories truly captivate while others leave you with the feeling of why was this written at the first place? Why does the writer wants to read or what wants to write the story, right? What was the point, for example? What message does the writer wants to convey? Now here, to make your short story more effectual, ponder on these points before dipping the nib in the ink. Okay, first one, you have to cover a very short time span. One single event that proves pivotal in the life of the characters that can illustrate the theme. So you have to characterize the character well, okay, how interesting the characters are and how they can attract other readers to read your short story. Okay. And then in a short story, say a big no to many characters because each new character will bring a new dimension to the story, and for an effective short story, too many diverse dimensions or directions will dilute the theme. So that's why you have to limit the character and which character that you want to portray more in your short story, and have only enough characters to effectively illustrate the theme. Okay. Next, every word counts. There is no room for unnecessary expansion in a short story. So it does not have to be very long without any message to pursue. For example, it does not always to be short also, but it is but use the appropriate amount of word when you are writing the story. Okay. If each word is not working towards putting across the theme, then you delete it. Do not put the words in your short story. And then focus on focus. The best stories are the ones that follow a narrow subject line. What is the point of your story? Its point is its theme. So what theme that you are going to put there? Is it a fantasy, horror, comedy, romance, or what? Okay, yeah, rom-com or what, and you have to focus on the theme that you are going to write. So what is the point of the story? Its point in its theme. It's tempting to digress, but in a short story you have to follow the straight and narrow, otherwise you end up with either a novel beginning or melting ideas to add up to nothing. Okay, that's why here you are asked to find out the setting of the story and also what aspect that the character have been highlighted in the extract, and also the tone of the writer, then how when the writer introduces the main characters and so on. Okay, this is the example of the short story. Okay, it's quite long. You can read it later, yeah, the cross photograph and others. Okay, let's see the example on the extract A. Sorry, it's quite late. It's actually very fun to write short story, yeah, because okay, here. Yeah, so you have to understand the key elements of a short story and also understand the beginning, middle, and also end in a context of the short story itself and how important the characters that you create in your short story, okay, and also how significant the setting in the story itself, yeah. And here, writing for the portfolio. So this is actually the guidelines of you how to write short story later on. Okay. The first one is an archetypal exercise. You can start your story with the line, you recall the memories that you have already experienced before, or I don't recall, and write for 20 minutes. Okay. Second, pick a scene from a story of your choice and rewrite it from a different perspective. For example, you rewrite a scene from different characters' point of view or from the same characters but using first person instead of third. Okay, so sometimes if you read a novel, for example, you will see the main character, the second lead character. Yeah, if you like watching Korean drama, for example, then you write it again by using your perspective. Okay, so it's a third person point of view. Okay, so it won't be the perspective will not be the same with as already written before. Okay, next, write a story from the point of view of an inanimate object, for example, table. Yeah. And then begin a story with the last line and write backward. End with the first line. Read it backward and then read it forward. Okay, and then have each member of your family or friends group suggest a word, such as an item, character, or event. Then write a story using all the words suggested. Okay. Next, so you have to involve your family members, your friends, for example, or you can ask your teachers, lecturers to give suggestion of your short story, so they can suggest the characters, for example, and so on. Next, divide a piece of paper down in the middle. On the left side, write about 9 nouns, not necessarily related to one another. And on the right, write about 9 words related to one certain occupation of your choice. And then draw lines from one column to the next, connecting one noun with one word from the right column. Choose one of these paired of words and write a short story of poem using them. Okay. And then create a character by starting with just a name, any name, and add details until the character gets placed in a plot. Next, take an ordinary snippet of a memory, maybe from your childhood, and embellish it, disguise it, and turn it into a new recollection. Okay, so you can rewrite your memory, for example, by expand it, yeah, into a more in a fantasy way. If you go to a cafe or a restaurant, then choose a person or people from another table and think of a story surrounding their reason for being there. Why they are spending their time in a cafe, for example, or in a restaurant. It's very interesting because one observes the tiny details, such as the way people are interacting, clothes, manner, etc. So you can observe what they are actually doing and also what they are actually wearing. And then you can tell it into a story and use them to add truth to a story. Okay, right. The next one, imagine the perfect writing situation for you and describe it in as much detail as possible. Where is it? What time of the day? What sounds do you hear? What objects surround you? What are you using to write? And what can you see when you look up from your writing? How do you feel? Try to explain why the situation would be so comforting and productive to you. Okay. Next, imagine that a producer is making your story into a movie. Write about the changes he or she might make to your plot, the actors who would play key roles, and the reviews that the movie might receive. Okay. And then write that a film producer is making your story into a movie. Write about the change. Write about the changes he or she might make to your plot, the actors who would play key roles, and the review that the movie might receive. Okay. The next one, write about your story in a letter to a family member or a friend. Start with, for example, I have to write this story about X, and here's what I'm thinking right now. Okay, you can use the term. Explaining your ideas to a friendly person is often a helpful strategy for clarifying those ideas for yourself. Okay. Next, we have shifts in perspective. What is it? For example, you can write about a past family gathering that you have already experienced. Okay. The most embarrassing thing that ever happened in your school, or the best teacher you ever had, time you learn to do something important, for example, swim, how to do ballet, how to make crafts, and so on, or the biggest event that you have ever intended. For example, you have ever intended NBA match, for example, or other football match in certain countries, and so on. Write the story in as much detail as possible, explaining what you saw, what you did, and how you felt. Then rewrite the same story from a perspective of someone else, a relative, a fellow student, another participant, a passerby, or etc. Next, we have genre changes. What is changes? Here, you can apply it by writing out your favorite joke or fairy tale or poem. Then rewrite that narrative as a tragedy, as a limerick, as haiku, as a serious academic essay, or as a breaking news story, or as a script for a music video. So you can use the genre that you want to use, okay? And the last one, open the dictionary and pick 5 words at random and write a story that incorporates all 5 words. Okay, so it will make you easier in writing the short story. Okay. All right, so it's not easy, but it's also easy to write the short story because you actually can apply the story that you can recall from your childhood, for example, from the experience that you have already had before, and then you apply it. You put it into the writing form. Okay, you tell people how interesting your story is, how sad, how horror, or how happy your story is, and you share to people. Okay, so good luck in writing the short story. The assignment will be given on the e-learning. Thank you. Bye bye.